Welcome to Christopher George, the solution series. I'm the man with a plan. Not left, not right, not red or blue. This is about what's right. And what we do, highlight integrity driven. Standing for this land, real leadership for all America. No parties, no games, no smoke, no spin. Real talk, real vision. Let's begin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Christopher George, the Solution Series. Today's episode, No Vote, No Country. The vote is the battlefield. Bring in the voting core. For those of you returning listeners, welcome back. For those of you who are new, welcome from wherever you're hailing from. Before we get into today's discussion, I want to take a minute to set expectations. If you've heard this before, this is a good time to grab a cup of coffee. If you haven't heard this before, this opening matters to me because it explains how I approach leadership, solutions, and this platform. Leadership isn't just talking. Leadership isn't just pointing out what's wrong. Leadership should come prepared with a plan and the courage to talk about it openly. The plan I bring isn't rigid. It's strong enough to move us forward and flexible enough to improve through focused conversation. Because the best plan always will be the one shaped by the most thoughtful input. That's the expectation here. This space is for discussion, but discussion with a purpose. If you engage, be direct, be respectful, focus your energy on the plan. If you see a flaw, bring a fix. If you have a what if, bring a solution with it. Noise doesn't move us forward. Thoughtful contribution does. This podcast is about America, but it's not limited to America because we're going to lead again. We live in a connected world. Many of the solutions discussed here can be applied anywhere people are working to build stability, dignity, and opportunity. My goal is to help America lead again, not by force, but by example, so others can adapt what works for their own communities. And let me be clear about something I strongly believe in. I believe there's always a nugget of truth and experience and insight. In every person, there's something valuable, something earned, something learned, and something seen from a perspective no one else has. That's why I welcome everyone to the table. Without you, there is no us. Without shared experience, there is no progress. But with that welcome comes responsibility. Those insights and experiences are meant to build, not tear down. To strengthen ideas, not sabotage them. To move us closer to solutions, not deeper into division. Guys, this is about evolution. Evolution as a country, evolution as a people, and then evolution as a world. Because our tools are more powerful than they've ever been. Our ability to build and equally our ability to destroy. That means we have a responsibility to do better, to think deeper, to lead smarter, to work towards peace that works for everyone, not just a few of us. That's the expectation. That's the standard. Now we can get to work. Something I'm going to start in my podcast. I want to kind of start with a vision of what I'm trying to portray or what I'm trying to do. Because I think that's something we lost. What's the vision for this country? What does it look like in 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 100 years? What does it look like? Only thing most people can tell us is we're going to have the iPhone 2000. And that's probably about the only thing they're probably thinking of, sadly. So this is my vision for the voting. Like I said, I'm introducing you to the voting core. That's CORPS, cores. But I want you to close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. It's early November. Cool air, clear skies, and it's Saturday morning, day 2 of a newly established 4-day national holiday called the We the People weekend. You're not rushing to work. Remember, it's Saturday. You're not checking the clock. There's no pressure. Because this weekend was set aside for one thing, the vote. You registered back in early September. That part's already done. Today, all you have to do is show up and vote. But wait a minute, you step outside and realize you don't have a ride to get to the voting station. But you know what? That's okay. Because today, as part of this new, this new national holiday that we set aside called the We the People weekend, school buses are running regular schedule, except the destination points of the voting stations for your location. Just like they do on Mondays through Fridays, but instead of picking up kids, they're picking up anybody who needs to get on the bus to go vote. The routes look familiar. The timing feels normal. Like I said, these buses are operating under state coordination, the same local systems that already serve your community. But like I said, today, they're authorized for the We the People weekend. The drivers volunteered for this day. They're paid overtime. It's a national holiday. The bus pulls up, you step on, and it takes you directly to your polling place. And it'll bring you home when you're done. City transit is running the same thing too. Buses, trains, shuttles, all moving on extended schedules, planned weeks in advance by the state and local election offices. Transportation isn't improvised, it's coordinated. Because on We the People weekend, access is planned, not assumed. You arrive at the voting location. The building is familiar. A school, a community center, a local hall. The same place your state has always used to conduct elections. Inside you see state election officials at the check-in stations, verifying registration, issuing ballots, answering process questions, doing the job they've always done. And alongside them, you notice something new. Voting corps agents, clearly identified in uniforms, calm, professional, moving quietly through the space. They're not running the election. They're not handling ballots. They're not checking names. They're observing, assisting, ensuring standards are being met. They answer questions about access. They help guide first-time voters. They assist elder voters and families. And in the background, they're doing what they were trained to do. Verify equipment readiness, monitor wait times, document flow, making sure what was planned is actually happening. No tension, no confusion, no overlap, just coordination. Outside, the atmosphere feels different. There's music playing, food trucks lined up, local groups hosting civic booths. Today, Saturday, is family voting day. Parents vote with their kids beside them. Grandparents explain why this matters. First-time voters are welcome, not overwhelmed. The state has organized the polling operation. The community has turned it into a civic moment. And the voting corps is there to protect the integrity of both. You vote, not hurried, not distracted, not wondering if it matters, because you can see clearly that everyone is doing their part. The state is running the election. The voting corps is safeguarding the system, and the people are showing up. And in that moment, you realize something. This is what democracy was always supposed to be, supposed to feel like. Not rushed, not fragile, not taken for granted, but ordered, accessible, shared. A 4-day We the People weekend, every early November, Friday through Monday. Each day with a focus, but every day open to everyone. Time removed as an excuse. Transportation removed as a barrier. Confusion removed from the process. This is not fantasy, guys. This is what it looks like when a country finally treats the vote with the seriousness it deserves. And that's the vision behind the voting corps. That's the vision I'm laying down today. All right, let's go. Once again, I'm asking you to look past the noise, guys. Past the constant outrage, past the never-ending optics and counter-optics that dominate our screens every single day. Because in all this noise, in all this visual chaos, it becomes hard to hear anything that actually makes sense anymore. So just for a moment, calm your mind, breathe, and come into the light with me, because this conversation matters. This is about democracy, not as an idea, not as a talking point, but as a living system that requires care, protection, and maintenance. Because ideas don't protect democracy, systems do. And it starts with the vote. The right to vote is not just another civic function. Listen, I'm not preaching to the choir here. You guys know how serious this is. But I think we've gotten so comfortable with it that we've forgotten how serious it is. Because it's the soul of our democracy. And if you think that sounds dramatic, let me take you back for a moment. From the very beginning of this country, the vote has been feared. Not respected, not honored, feared. Because voting shifts power. And power, when it moves towards people, has always made some uncomfortable. People don't get beaten, burned, lynched, or murdered over something meaningless. They get attacked because they're doing something that matters. Guys, across generations, Americans of every race, black, white, Hispanic, Native, Asians, have been threatened, silenced, and killed simply for trying to vote and for helping someone else do it. That's not ancient history. That's American history. And the lesson is simple. The vote has always been powerful and therefore always under attack. Now fast forward to today. The threat looks different, but the danger is the same. I think even greater. I was watching the news this morning and I heard CNN say that somebody was talking about getting rid of the election. Guys, we're here. We are here. Today it's not always fire hoses or literacy tests. It's fragmentation, distrust, inconsistent systems, apathy. Technology we barely explain to voters but expect them to trust anyway. We've turned the most sacred mechanism in our democracy into something confusing, inconsistent, and divisive. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Our voting system is not broken because Americans don't care. It's broken because we never built it like a critical infrastructure. And that's where my background matters. In the military, we don't treat critical systems casually. We don't say we'll check on it every 4 years and hope for the best. Man, can you imagine that? We audit constantly. We standardize where it matters. We rotate personnel. We remove conflicts of interest. And we prepare before the crisis, not after. So when I hear people argue endlessly about voting integrity, access, machines, turnouts, trust, I don't hear an unsolvable problem. I hear a systems failure. And leadership just doesn't talk about failures like they've been doing for the last blank years. Leadership should build solutions like I'm doing right now. That's why in this Out of the Darkness series, I don't just point out problems. I show you the plan. And today that plan is called the Voting Corps. And let me be clear about something right now. This is not about big government. I don't believe in big government, guys. But I absolutely believe in focused government. One of the most legitimate roles of government, perhaps its strongest, is auditing systems that affect everyone equally. Let me say that again, so everybody can hear that. And so everybody who's really simple in the mind right now, kind of understands, one of the most legitimate roles of the government, perhaps its strongest role, is auditing systems that affect everyone equally. We audit airplanes. We audit supply chains. We audit food supply chains. We audit financial institutions. But somehow we've convinced ourselves that auditing the vote, the foundation of our democracy, is controversial. That makes no damn sense. This voting corps I put together is built on a simple idea. If the vote is sacred, then the system protecting it must be professional, permanent, and protected from politics. Listen again. If the vote is sacred, then the system protecting it must be professional, permanent, and protected from politics. Here's what makes it different. First, this voting corps, it's not partisan. The voting corps pledges loyalty to the people, not to the parties, candidates, or administrations. It's structured. This isn't a loose collection of volunteers or last-minute poll workers thrown into chaos every election cycle. This is a trained, rotated, audited civic service body modeled after what works in high-trust institutions. It's proactive, not reactive. Instead of waiting for election day drama, the voting corps audits continuously. Machines, processes, access points, mail-in systems, staff readiness. Not once every 4 years, but every year round. That's how trust is built. It respects states while setting standards. States still run elections, but the voting corps provides national benchmarks, support, auditing, and transparency. So no American's vote is stronger or weaker based on geography. And fifth, it brings the voter back into the process. This isn't just about machines and audits. It's about education, participation, visibility. Turning voting from a burden into a civic event, from confusion into clarity, from suspicion into trust. Now let's be honest. This isn't easy. Standardization always meets resistance. Transparency makes people uncomfortable. Auditing exposes weaknesses. But if we really want the system to work, none of that should matter, right? Because that's what we want. We want this to work. And yes, any system that actually works will be challenged. And here's the difference. This plan doesn't hide from the challenge, and it anticipates them. Because real leadership doesn't wait for permission, it prepares. And that's what I've done with this plan, guys. I prepared for everything. I tried to prepare for every contingency I could think of. You know, the voting corps doesn't assume bad faith, it prepares for failure. It doesn't accuse, but it verifies. It doesn't inflame, but it informs. And most importantly, it shows Americans what the system looks like, how it works, and why it can be trusted. Because democracy cannot survive on blind faith. It survives on earned trust. This episode and this plan is my contribution to that trust. Not for today's headlines, not for political cycles, but for the next generation. Your kids, my kids, their kids. Because when we protect the vote, guys, we protect the soul of America. And that is how we come out of the darkness together. By protecting the vote, we protect the soul of America. You know, if you're going to ask people to trust the system, you owe them structure, discipline, and transparency. So let's go inside what this voting corps looks like that I created. Because it's not a theory. It's not a loose collection of volunteers like I mentioned earlier. It's not a patchwork effort. It's not an election season scramble. It's not even a think tank. And it's definitely not some campaign promise. The voting corps is designed as a structured, disciplined, unified national service body, modeled after military doctrine, but adapted for a civic mission. Because when something matters, you don't improvise, you train. Let's start with the most important piece. Who serves? The voting corps is not staffed by politicians, not by party loyalties, and not by people looking to climb the political ladder. That's intentional. Voting corps agents are going to be drawn from everyday Americans, teachers, veterans, technologists, civic organizers, young professionals who believe democracy is worth protecting. Because when the job is this important, politics cannot be the qualification. This principle isn't new for me. It's part of a broader reform philosophy I lay out in my book, If I Was President, the Christopher George story, where I argue that certain positions in our government are simply too powerful and too consequential to be treated as political appointments. Positions like the FBI director, the attorney general, the postmaster general, the health and human services secretary, to name a few. Because these leadership roles that shape justice, information, health, and public trust, those jobs shouldn't be awarded based on party loyalty. You know, their loyalty should be to the people first. All right. And voted on by the people, not picked from, a group of, $1 million friends and stuff, They should be earned through public confidence, just like I said. That's why I propose that these roles be directly elected by American people on a national ballot. just like a presidential election with fixed terms of 5 years, designed for stability, independence, and accountability to the public, not to politics. The same philosophy applies here. The chief of the voting corps will not be appointed behind closed doors. That position would be voted on by the nation through a popular vote based on qualifications, integrity, and trust, not party affiliation. Because the mission comes first, the people come first, and democracy deserves leadership that answers directly to the public it serves. The voting corps is built on that idea that some responsibilities are too important to be political and must be instead be professional, independent, and accountable to the people alone. People who reflect the country, not control it. And here's the key distinction. No one serves where they vote. No one audits their home precinct. No one oversees a system they have personal or community ties to. And I'm talking about the voting corps members now, the ones that actually work for the voting corps. That's not distrust. That's integrity by design. That's professionalism. In the military, we call that conflict avoidance. You don't put people in positions where temptation or perception can undermine trust. The voting corps is built that same way. Well, let's talk about structure, because this is where people get nervous. And I'm going to keep telling you this over and over again, because I know some of you are not going to get it, even though I keep telling you. This is not a federal takeover. States will still run their elections. States will still control their processes. But the voting corps will provide something that we have never had before: consistency. Because with the voting corps, you get national standards, professional auditing, shared best practices, and then clear benchmarks. Think of it like aviation. Airports are local. Pilots fly for private airlines, but safety standards are national. I'm going to say that again. Airports are local. Pilots fly for private lines, Southwest, American Airlines, U.S. Air. But the safety standards that all those pilots, regardless of what airline they work to, are national. That's what this voting corps is. That's national safety standard. No one calls that tyranny. They call it common sense. That's what the voting corps brings to voting, common sense. It also brings a national headquarters focused on standards, innovation, and oversight. It brings regional offices that understand local conditions. It brings state liaisons who works with states, not over them. And it brings citizen review boards embedded in the process to keep everything visible. Transparency isn't an afterthought. It's built into the structure. Now I want to slow this down just for a minute, because this part really matters, and it's where a lot of people get uneasy. Let me say this clearly. Technology is not the enemy, guys. I know we think it is, but it's not. Unaccountable technology is. We use technology every day to bank, to fly, to communicate, to run hospitals, to run power grids. But here's the difference. Those systems are audited. They are tested. They are verified. And when they fail, someone is accountable. Voting technology should be held to at least the same standard, guys. We don't even have that standard across the board. The voting corps does not chase the newest gadget. It doesn't get distracted by flashy innovation. Instead, it demands systems that meet 4 simple requirements. They must be secure. They must be accessible. They must be auditable. And they must be understandable. Because if you can't explain a system to the people who rely on it, then you have no business asking them to trust it. That makes perfect sense. Paper trails matter. That's not nostalgia, that's verification. If there is no physical record, then there's no independent way to confirm what happened. Encryption matters. Not because we're paranoid, but because bad actors, foreign and domestic, are real. Accessibility matters. If a voter with a disability, a voter who speaks another language, a voter who isn't tech savvy can't use the system confidently, the system has already failed. And here's the key test. If a voter cannot understand at a basic level how their vote is counted, that's a problem. Not because they need to know the code, but because democracy depends on confidence. And if a system cannot be independently audited by trained professionals who are not tied to vendors, parties, or local interests, that's also a problem. Guys, in a grown-up world, I don't know why I would have to explain this to any grown-up, because this is common sense stuff. Trust without verification is not trust. It's hope. And hope is not a system that we want to put our democracy accountable to. Now, let me be equally clear about this, what this is not. Like I said, this is not about control. This is not about surveillance. And this is not about choosing winners or losers. The voting corps does not watch who you vote for. It does not track how you vote. It does not care what your beliefs are. It protects the lane so the people can drive freely. That's it. Think of it like this. The voting corps doesn't tell you where to go. It doesn't tell you how fast to drive. It doesn't tell you which direction is right. It just makes sure the road is paved. The lines are painted. The lights work. And nobody is secretly messing with the traffic signals. Simple. That's not control. That's infrastructure. The voting corps doesn't tell you how to vote. It doesn't care who you vote for. It only cares that when you do vote, your ballot is counted, your voice is protected, and your participation is respected. That's it. And guys, this voting corps job, this is not a volunteer weekend gig. Every voting corps member goes through formal civic training, a 1 or 2 month basic training program called I call it the Doctrine of the Nation, covering the history of voting rights, constitutional law, ethics, de-escalation, and system oversight. Why? Because you cannot protect what you don't understand, people. These people are, and like I said, these are people who want to be here. And these are going to be people who, they're going to, this is going to be their dedication, their life, voting. So we want really dedicated people. This training grounds every agent in history and sanctity of voting rights. It grounds them in constitutional and legal framework. It grounds them in cybersecurity, technology operations, and machine auditing. And it grounds them in de-escalation, ethical oversight, and civic leadership. And this isn't about enforcement. It's about guardianship. The voting corps does not police voters. It protects the process. In my mind, I envision voting corps agents wearing distinct uniforms, not to intimidate, but to signal accountability. Uniforms mean visibility in this instance. Visibility means responsibility. Every agent upholds a clear code of integrity, pledging loyalty not to a party, not to politics, not to administrations, but to the people and to the principle of universal suffrage. The pledge is not symbolic. It's enforced. Agents undergo rigorous background checks, federal ethics training, and yes, random polygraph testing throughout their service. Why? Because trust must be earned continuously, not assumed once. Integrity, and everybody has a price. I'm just going to keep it real. Everybody has a price. And this is too serious to be bought out on. Our voting is too serious for anybody to be bought out on. Anybody. Integrity is not what you say. It's what you submit yourself to. The voting corps forges an esprit de corps, a shared sense of duty and unity. Mirroring military service, but without violence. Because this is a war without weapons. Their arsenal is truth. The uniform is accountability. And the most powerful ammunition is the ballot itself. The motto I created for the voting corps, we carry no rifles, but we carry ballot bullets. Those ballot bullets strike down corruption. They defend against tyranny, and they are tools of freedom. And just like any soldier trains to protect the nation, these civic soldiers train to protect democracy at its roots. Now let's talk about machines, because I've been hearing some interesting stuff on the internet, online about this, because this matters. Under the voting code, every voting machine in the United States is federally registered, meaning that they're going to be on the federal books. All right. The maintenance of those machines is going to be a shared maintenance between the states and the federal government. But because guys, I just heard that some civilian owns all the voting machines now. Come on, guys. That don't make a lick of damn sense. My alter ego Milo would tell you, I don't know what the hell going on over there. I'm gonna introduce him to y'all slowly. But like I said, under the voting code, every voting machine in the United States is fairly registered, not owned by the federal government, not controlled by Washington, but accounted for. Every machine, no matter what state it sits in, is registered at the federal level, so we know where it is, what version it is, when it was last audited, and when it must be tested again. Simple. That's how you eliminate guesswork. That's how you know what needs to be audited and when. Machines are standardized through competitive federal contracts, renewed, every 10 to 15 years, or based on how fast technology moves, because technology moves fast, and encryption is moving even faster. They must be secure, military-grade encryption, accessible, ADA compliant, transparent, verifiable paper trails, and cost-effective. Manufacturing is regionally distributed to protect supply chains and stimulate local economies. Consistently without centralization, standards without takeover. I say again, consistency without centralization, and standards without takeover. Now we get to the backbone of the entire system, people. The continuous random auditing, which I call the CRA. The CRA model is the voting court's most critical accountability mechanism. It ensures that all machines, procedures, polling locations, and voting access methods, including mail-in voting, are continuously tested and validated throughout the year, well before elections take place. It is based on the principle that trust must be earned consistently, not just tested occasionally. The CRA model operates on a 10-month loop. Every year, every cycle, 25% of machines and polling locations are audited each quarter, chosen randomly with no advance notice. In the military, you know about the 10%. By month 10, every voting machine in the United States has been touched, tested, and validated before any national election. No after, no before. The audits include machine performance and tamper resistance, software and firmware validation, chain of custody from warehouse to polling site, poll worker training readiness, wait time analytics and voter throughput, ADA compliance and language access, mail-in ballot drop box security in coordination with USPS. And here's the key difference. The voting court works with the states, not over them. This is cooperative federalism in real time. Support, not override. Transparency, not suspicion. Weak areas receive more scrutiny the following year. Strong areas become models. That's how the system improves. Sometimes when I be writing some of these plans down, I'm like, well, who the hell do I ask? Because right now nobody's doing this but me. Nobody's trying to put a voting core plan together. Nobody's trying to talk about the immigration reform. Nobody's talking about change in education. Nobody's talking about offshore water platforms to generate fresh water and pump that water in and create energy through the water movement with pipes that turn. Nobody's doing that. So, so for me, I ask AI, what's going on? How does that sound? So I ask AI about voting. And I asked AI how effective the CRM in voting would be, and AI supports the CRA model for its scalability, its risk-adaptive architecture, and its predictive capacity. Through machine learning, it can identify high-risk patterns from past audits and prioritize future inspections accordingly. Proactive auditing is essential in modern digital infrastructure, and this plan brings election security closer to a standard seen in a critical national system like air traffic controller or nuclear sites. And it says strongly recommended. Almost done, people, but this is something I'm really hyped about this, guys, because I think this is something we need right now, today. Voting access, voting week. So I told you about a voting weekend, a 4-day weekend. So I'm going to talk about that just a little bit. You know, we've talked about history. We've talked about systems. We've talked about structure, accountability, and trust. Now we talk about people, because democracy doesn't live in documents. It lives in participation. And for far too long in this country, voting has been treated like an inconvenience, something you squeeze in before work or after work, or not at all because life got in the way. Guys, that's backwards. You know, as one of my old first songs used to say, that's ass backwards. You know, voting is not a burden. It's a right, and it should feel like one. That's why one of the most important elements of the voting core is something I call the voting weekend, or the We the People weekend. You know, the voting core proposes a national 4-day voting weekend, Friday through Monday, recognized as a federal holiday. You know, let that sink in for a second. I envision the 4-day voting weekend working like this. You know, one national 4-day voting weekend, Friday through Monday, immediately preceding Election Day in early November. Preceding this 4-day weekend in the month of September, you know, I envision a national voter registration and education weekend, meaning that in September, preceding the national vote, we have a national voter registration and education weekend. You know, this supports voting weekend without competing with it. You know, and then in that early September, you know, register, you know, for the voting thing, for the early September, no vote, no ballots, no voting, just education, registration, and access. On the actual voting weekend in November, I apologize for the little confusion if anybody's confused. Early September for registration and activation, no voting, no ballots. November is the actual 4-day federal holiday, starting on a Friday. On that Friday, which is the first major turnout wave, employers' schedules are adjusted because this is federal holiday, and then school and city bus routes, because I've told you during this 4-day holiday, I want all school routes and bus routes to open up, but the destination will be the whatever local polling stations they're going to have. So that's Friday. Now remember, it's open to anybody who wants to come, but I'm just putting these days on there to, you know, to generate some new energy. And then Saturday will be called the Family Voting Day, where we have civic festivals and where we expect a high community engagement. Like I said, anybody can come. I'm just, you know, for you know, make these some festive days for, you know, voting. This is the backbone. This is the spine of this country. Sunday, we have a faith community turnout, elder access, low pressure participation. And then Monday, we have a final push, ADA support, and then a missed work recovery window. You know, this rhythm is intentional, because what data says about all this is that turnout increases when time barriers are removed, transportation is predictable, voting is social and visible, and the moment feels important. You know, I plan on having fireworks. I plan it on it being bigger than the 4th of July, because to me, it's, you know, it's bigger than the 4th of July. Hell, we wouldn't have a 4th of July without voting. All right. Well, you know how you say, I used to say, well, all right then. You know, and then the data also says that countries with voting holidays, multi-day voting, or strong civic rituals consistently outperform the U.S. in turnout. My model combines all three of those for 4 days. Time's not a barrier, but as an invitation. No more choosing between your paycheck and your civic duty. No more rushing. No more I couldn't get there in time. We make space for democracy, guys, on purpose. I'm not sure why the hell we haven't done it yet. Made space for democracy on purpose. All right. And when you give people time, something powerful happens. They show up. All right. They show up. I know some people don't want to hear that, but that's the way it's supposed to be. Hell, that's the way it's going to be. So let's talk about how people actually get to the polls, because like I mentioned before, access is not theoretical, it's physical. And like I said, on voting weekends, I'm reiterating some points now. School buses follow the normal routes, but instead of taking children to school, they transport adults to vote. City buses do the same. Transit systems are fully engaged. Drivers are paid holiday wages, creating buy-in and creating reliability. And yes, this is where modern coordination matters. The voting corps works with cities, states, and private partners to expand access even further. Coordinate use of city buses, repurpose school bus fleets, and yes, rideshare partnerships, including the Uber and similar services supported by dedicated voting corps funds. So cost is never a barrier to participation. You know, we could have Uber take every old person on the planet to vote. We could have a fund set aside for something like that, you know. While all this is happening, voting corps analytics teams monitor turnout in real time, ensuring underperforming zones receive immediate focus or future support, identifying where participation is low, support increases, identifying where access is lacking, solutions are built. Voting corps works with state outreach offices to provide event kits, logistical consultation, and federally funded mini grants for voting. This is what focused government looks like, guys. This is what I was talking about earlier. Not mandates, not micromanagement, but coordination. The voting corps doesn't run your city, but it helps align the pieces so the system works for the people. On voting weekend, polling locations are open longer. Ballot drop locations are multiplied. And something else changes too. Voting becomes visible. Communities are encouraged to treat the weekend like a civic festival. Like I said, food vendors, music, children's activities, voter education booths, turning voting into a celebration, not a chore. Food trucks, local music, cultural programming, family-friendly voter education booths, not politics, not campaigning, but civic pride. Kids see their parents vote. Neighbors see neighbors participate. Democracy becomes something you experience, not something you avoid. And voting corps agents are on site to police, not to police, but to guide, assist, and ensure the process runs smoothly. This is important, so I want to keep saying it clearly about the roles of the states, because this part is often misunderstood when people start talking about, you know, consolidations and stuff like that. States are not being asked to give up control of elections. They already have constitutional responsibility to hold them. That doesn't change. What does change is who protects and maintains the infrastructure. Under the voting corps model, the federal government manages and audits the voting equipment, ensures every machine is registered, tested, and secure, and coordinates national access standards. States do what they're always done, conduct elections. This isn't about forcing states into new political compliance. It's about clearly separating responsibilities so elections are fair, consistent, and trusted everywhere in the country, and are treated the same everywhere in the country. The voting corps uses performance incentives, not punishment. Think of it like this. States drive the car. They decide where to go and how to get there. The voting corps builds and maintains the road, paints the line, checks the bridges, and makes sure the traffic lights works. No one is forcing the states to drive. Driving is already in their responsibility. We're just making sure the road is safe for everyone again. You know, in my plan, I introduce voting innovation grants. High-performing states receive grants to pilot voting innovations, mobile voting vans, language support systems, election simulation training, etc. Voter engagement bonuses. States that significantly increase voter turnout in underrepresented communities are awarded with infrastructure grants, media spotlights, and recognition as a model democracy zones. And if one of you idiots say woke, I'm going to beat you up. Priority procurement placement. States with gold audit ratings gain priority in federal procurement or discretionary funding, not tied to voting. Encouraging broader cooperation. Leading becomes models recognized publicly as model democracy zones. National rankings are published annually. States that lead become benchmarks and hosts for national symposiums or best practice showcases, bringing more money to that state. Decentralized manufacturing equity. This is what that means. Voting machine contracts will be incentivized manufacturers to spread production across regions, rewarding participating states with job creation and training opportunities. High-performing states gain advantages in unrelated federal procurement, not tied for gain, but tied to performance and trust. This isn't coercion. It's positive reinforcement, and it works because people respond better to incentives than threats. Now let's talk about sustainability, because nothing matters if it can't be dismantled every election cycle. Okay, my plan, guys, you got to listen to this. The voting corps is funded through a dedicated 0.5% national tax reserved exclusively for its operations. I talk about this in my book, If I Was President, the Christopher George story. I legalize marijuana across the nation. If I become president, I legalize prostitution in the way the Germans do it in Germany, and then I heavily tax those because there's billions of dollars being made in those efforts, underground illegally, and it's killing our kids. It's killing our, it's killing a lot. It's destroying. I'm not gonna say it's killing. Let me not go that negative route, but it's destroying the moral fiber of this country. And if it's going to do that, it needs to be taxed, and it needs to be charged, and it needs to be managed, and we need to have visibility over it. I'm just going to leave it at that because I don't want to digress. But that's how it's going to be funded. That 0.5% national tax reserve exclusive operations. That's funding, guys. This tax cannot be reappropriated by Congress or state legislators. Voting corps is protected via federal statute with consideration for a constitutional amendment to preserve it as a nonpartisan civic institution. Legal language will define the voting corps as an entity serving the people, not the government. Its mandate is a long-term electoral integrity, not short-term political gain. The corps is chartered by federal statute with a long-term goal of constitutional protection, not to expand power, but to protect neutrality. Its mandate is simple: serve the people, protect the vote, think long-term, not today's politics, tomorrow's democracy. All audits and compliance reports will be published in real-time dashboards. I mentioned this, earlier. Voting corps partners with state review boards and citizen observers for full access. Quarterly public briefings in all 50 states. Corps hosts national democracy days in schools and libraries. Whistleblower protections for agents and community members alike. Every audit, every machine test, every performance score published publicly in real time. Dashboards anyone can see. Data anyone can analyze. Citizen review boards are embedded. Public forums are held nationwide. Whistleblowers are protected. Guys, my goal is to improve fraud detection and turnout forecasting. The system also looks at patterns and signals such as machines that have failed tests before, locations with long wait times, areas with the best access issues, areas with past access issues, equipment that hasn't been serviced recently, and then reports of confusion, delays, or breakdown. Using that information, the system helps auditors answer one simple question: where should we look first to prevent problems? Transparency isn't a slogan here, it's a requirement. Because trust doesn't come from reassurance, it comes from visibility. All right, guys, I apologize for this being so long. But I really do think this is a great idea, and we need to start this up now. Our vote is really being threatened. After serving 25 years in the military, after setting foot in more than 15 countries, after seeing firsthand how power is held, abused, stolen, and denied around the world, I come to understand something very quickly. What we have here in America is rare. We always say it. We always pride ourselves on it. We stick our chest out on it. But I think a lot of you really don't understand because you're doing a lot of stupid stuff right now. A lot of childish and petty stuff. Any American that hates on another American is not an American. Any American who hates on another American is not an American. Think about that. Our democracy, our right to vote, that simple but profound idea that every citizen gets an equal voice, regardless of wealth, race, or status, that's not common in the world, guys. And guess what? It's not guaranteed. I hope you're seeing that now. And it's not permanent unless we protect it. We, not the politicians, not the senators, not the representatives. We, people in the sweatsuits, pink hair, purple hair, whatever color hair you got. We the people that protect. The vote is precious. The vote is fragile. And the vote must be guarded. Not casually, not rhetorically, but seriously, with intention, with structure, and yes, with our lives if necessary. Yeah, that's what we've been doing for the last 250 years. Because history is clear about one thing. When people lose confidence in the vote, they don't just lose faith in elections, they lose confidence in the country. So let me be very direct. If we don't have confidence in our voting system, we really don't have a country. And if we don't have confidence in the vote, we really don't have a democracy. That's how serious this is. I don't know what made me put it out at this time. I had been planning, I had wrote the paper for this, and I really do need you to go read the paper. All of you, everybody needs to start reading. Our critical thinking skills in this country needs to be elevated like yesterday. I didn't know what I heard this morning. What I was going to hear this morning, where somebody's casually talking about getting rid of the election. I'm like, oh hell! Now it almost feels like like I got hit with a blast of light and said, go put this voting core out because you need it right now because they're trying to get rid of it. I don't know. But we need to elevate the seriousness of the vote to where it belongs, at the front of our national priorities. Because right now, that confidence is under strain. That seriousness is slipping. Trust is eroding. And there are more pathways than ever for agencies, institutions, and interests, some well-intentioned, most of them not, to influence, shape, or control how we vote. There should be no path, none, for anyone to weaken, manipulate, damage, or undermine the American vote. That's why this voting core matters. Not later, now. It's critical. This is not a reaction, guys. This is a preparation. We know what doesn't work. We've seen what doesn't work. This is the evolution of that. This is the elevation of that. In the Army, we had a saying. If you're in a defensive posture, and you got time before the enemy arrives, you better improve your foxhole. Make it better. Make it more defensible. Give yourself the best chance you can to survive. You don't stop building. You don't assume you're ready. You reinforce until they're gone. You reinforce smarter. Always using the time available to increase your chances for success. That's what this voting core is. Like I said, we've seen what doesn't work. We've seen what gets attacked. Now it's time to protect what matters the most, the right to vote. This is not red or blue. This is American. It's about people. We the people. This is not about control. It's about trust. This is not about today's politics. It's about tomorrow's democracy. We need to build the voting corps, not as a government program, but as a national promise. Because when we protect the vote, we protect the soul of America. Let us make ballots. Let us make ballot bullets, the only kind we never need to defend this country again. Did you hear me? Let us make ballot bullets, the only kind we ever need to defend this country again. All right. That's all I have for today, guys. Now that you know the plan, now that you've heard what this actually looks like, structure, accountability, access, and protection, the question becomes simple. What are we going to do with it? Because plans don't move on their own. People move them. The challenge ahead is not whether this idea makes sense, because it does. I don't need validation from any of you. I just need you to fall in and let's go. Because I got the plan. In lieu of no plan. All right? That's all I'm asking you to do. But I need your help to move forward, not to be criticized. No. You heard me at the beginning. The challenge is whether enough Americans are willing to use the power they already have to stop the erosion before it's too late. And this is where you come in. I need you to use your voice. If you believe in this plan, if you believe voting confidence matters, then the next step is straightforward. Contact your congressman, contact your senator, and tell them plainly, this is the plan we need. This is what voting protection should look like. And this is what we want to push forward now. When enough people ask for the same thing across this nation, it stops being an idea and it becomes a priority. That's how change actually starts. I also need you to read it. I need you to understand it, and I need you to share it. I've made the full plan available. Not a slogan, not a summary, the actual document. The hyperlink is in the introduction of this podcast. Download it, read it, and understand it. Then pass it on. Send it to your family, your friends, your community leaders. Guys, like I said, this is not about politics. This is about protecting the foundation of the country your children will inherit. And then next, I need you guys, and here's the hardest part, but it needs to be said. We have to stop sending people into the office who don't take voting integrity seriously, guys. No more voting out of habit. No more voting for personalities. No more voting for slogans. Ask candidates one simple question. Do you understand this plan, or better yet, do you have a plan? Guys, you need to start voting people in office who have a goddamn plan. Are you willing to support something like it for our region and our country? If the answer is no, or if they can't explain their position, then they don't deserve the job. This is how erosion happens, when we stop demanding seriousness from the people we elect. Because too many Americans don't vote today. Not because they don't care, but because the system doesn't meet them where they are. That's why this voting weekend matters. That's why a 4-day federal holiday matters. That's why the transportation access and the time matter. This plan is in your best interest. It's in your children's best interest. It's in the best interest of the country that wants to stay a democracy. Guys, this is the moment to move. Not angrily, not blindly, but deliberately. Use your voice, share the plan, demand better. That's how we stop erosion. That's how we protect the vote. And that's how we secure our future. Together. Until then, stay grounded, stay.
Now that you know the plan, it's time to stand. Join the evolution for the solution. Join the evolution for the solution. A vision, no wishing. Let's spread integrity through the land by giving a evolution, join evolution, join evolution, join evolution, join evolution, for the solution. Keep the light, keep the fire, America we inspire. We got to fight, fight, fight for our rights day and night. For the solution, join evolution, for the solution, join evolution, for the solution. Join evolution, join evolution, join evolution. A vision. No.